It was a completely ordinary workday. No red alerts, no alarms, no signs that anything was about to go wrong. A Twitter employee sat in front of his computer in a familiar room, doing the same repetitive tasks he did every day. Emails, meetings, internal messages. Then the phone rang. On the other end of the line was a calm, polite, confident voice, introducing himself as someone from the internal IT department. There was an issue with the VPN. It had been happening a lot recently. Working from home was putting strain on the system. All he needed to do was log in again, just once, and everything would be fixed. There was no reason to doubt it. The caller knew his name, knew his department, knew exactly what problem he was dealing with. He followed the instructions, because that is what anyone in his position would have done. Username, password. A notification popped up on his phone asking him to confirm the login. He tapped approve. It took only a few seconds. Everything worked again. The call ended with a polite wish for a pleasant evening. He went back to his work, unaware that the moment he had just lived through was far more than a routine technical issue. No one told him that somewhere else, a complete stranger had just walked through the largest door inside Twitter. Not with malware, not with elite hacking skills, but with trust. And the most unsettling part was this. The person behind it was not a hacker genius from a movie, just someone who understood people very well. The one who stepped through that door was not a ghost in the system, nor the kind of tech prodigy people like to imagine. His name was Graham Ivan Clark. When it happened, Graham was only 17 years old. At an age when most people are still worried about homework and first relationships, Graham was already living in a very different world. He grew up in Tampa, Florida, in a family that broke apart early. His parents divorced when he was young, leaving behind a quiet house filled with spaces no one knew how to name. Graham lived with his mother and sister, withdrawn, soft-spoken, almost completely disconnected from the outside world. School was not a place where he belonged. Friends, even less so. In crowded hallways, Graham was invisible. No one noticed him. No one asked how he was doing. No one truly saw him. The real world felt loud, distant, and completely outside of his control. He was not angry. He was not rebellious. He simply withdrew inward. Long hours alone in his room, in front of a glowing screen, became the only place where he felt safe. There, he did not have to explain who he was. He did not have to face judgmental looks. He did not have to answer uncomfortable questions. Graham did not dream of becoming a criminal. He only wanted to disappear from a world he never felt part of. And from that isolation, a quiet inner life began to form. A young person who was never listened to, slowly learning to create his own sense of value along paths no one had taught him how to stop. For Graham, Minecraft was not just a game. It was a refuge, the only world he could enter without asking permission from anyone. In his small room, when the screen lit up, Graham was no longer the quiet boy from the real world. He was the one who set the rules, the one who built, the one who destroyed. In hardcore mode, everything carried absolute weight. One life, and it was over. No second chances. No room for mistakes. That was exactly what gave Graham a feeling he had never known outside the game. Control. Here, every action had clear consequences. Every decision belonged to him. No one mocked him. No one dismissed him. No one took his choices away. Graham spent hours in that world, learning how to optimize, calculate, observe patterns, and exploit small gaps. Slowly, that sense of control became addictive. Not power in a flashy sense, but the feeling of holding his own fate in his hands. A single mistake could erase everything, and that made every action heavy, tense, and obsessive. Graham grew accustomed to living in that state, where the line between winning and losing was so thin it could disappear with a single click. And when he carried that mindset back into the real world, Graham did not realize he had begun to see people the same way. as another game. A game with rules, with loopholes, and with lives that were not allowed to make mistakes. Everything started very small, almost harmless, at least in Graham's mind. In the world of Minecraft, where transactions were fast and anonymous, he began selling things players desperately wanted. Rare capes, clean usernames, items that existed only on a screen, yet carried real value for others. Money started to come in. Not much, but consistently. For a boy not even old enough to drive, it was a feeling he had never experienced. For the first time, Graham was making money without asking anyone for permission. No explanations, no waiting. Just a few messages, a few promises, and it was done. What mattered was not the amount, it was the feeling. The feeling of slipping past a system, the feeling of taking a shortcut without being noticed. The buyers never received what they paid for, but no one knocked on the door. No warning emails, no accounts shut down, no consequences. Each time he got away with it, the line inside Graham shifted a little further. He no longer thought of what he was doing as wrong, just an opportunity, just being a little smarter. And then came the most dangerous moment of all. Not when he made more money, but when Graham realized a cold truth. He had done it, and no one had stopped him. No police, no punishment, no price to pay. The first time, not getting caught. For many people, that is just luck. But for a teenager searching for control, it was the clearest signal possible. If he had made it this far without consequences, why not go further? And in that quiet moment, when everything still seemed fine, Graham crossed a line he would never fully return from. After those early successes, Graham began looking for something bigger, deeper, beyond the limits of a game. That was when he found OG users. No advertising, no noise, just a closed forum where names mattered less than what people possessed. There, human identity was traded like merchandise. Social media accounts, emails, phone numbers, pieces of real lives reduced to short lines of text with a price tag. To Graham, OG users felt like a classroom with no blackboard, where every lesson came at a cost. He signed up, tried to trade, and quickly failed. Accused, banned, labeled as untrustworthy. Old tricks no longer worked here. No one cared how old you were. No one cared where you came from. There was only one rule. Reputation was everything. Graham failed, but he did not leave. Instead, he watched, read conversations, studied how others operated, and he learned something crucial. Real power was not technical skill. It was the ability to manipulate trust. You did not need to hack a system if you could convince someone to open the door. You did not need to break a lock if you could make someone hand you the key. OG users did not teach Graham how to write code. It taught him how to think, how to see people as vulnerabilities waiting to be exploited. And once Graham understood that, the world in front of him suddenly became much larger. No longer small transactions, no longer a game. This was where big moves were prepared in silence, and Graham was learning how to walk in that world. One day, Graham read about a man named Greg Bennett, an investor, an adult with a family and a career. Not careless, not ignorant. Greg had simply lost his phone. That was all. A small incident most people have experienced or feared. He went to his mobile provider to request a replacement SIM. Everything followed procedure. Identity checks, waiting, leaving. But what Greg did not know was that during that time, someone else walked out with his phone number. Within hours, Greg's world began to collapse piece by piece. His phone lost signal, his email was accessed, his bank accounts were opened, his crypto wallet was breached. No broken glass, no forced entry, no loud alarms, just numbers quietly disappearing. 164 Bitcoin were gone. By the time Greg realized what had happened, it was too late. Over $800,000 at the time. a number that would grow into tens of millions. For Graham, this was no longer just a story online. It was a map, a cold guide to how the real world actually worked. He realized that in the digital age, a phone number was not just a way to communicate. It was a key, an identity, a gateway to everything else. Losing it did not mean losing a device. It meant losing control of your life. What stayed with Graham was not the money, but the silence of that moment. Greg was not robbed with violence, not threatened, not tricked by complex schemes. He simply trusted that the system was protecting him, and that trust opened the door. Graham understood something clearly. The most dangerous thing was not hackers. It was the false sense of safety everyone lived with every day. And if it could happen to Greg Bennett, it could happen to anyone. Any phone number, any life. Time began to turn into Graham's enemy. Every passing day brought him closer to turning 18, an invisible but heavy line. Graham knew exactly what that meant. Before 18, he was still a minor. After 18, every mistake carried adult consequences. And Graham knew that if he was going to do something truly big, this was his last window. He was not looking for another small scam, not a few more side deals. He needed a single strike powerful enough to eclipse everything he had done before. One strike, one time. He started observing large companies, not from the outside, but from how people functioned inside them. And then he turned to LinkedIn. There, thousands of Twitter employees publicly displayed their names, titles, departments, work histories, everything a secure system would prefer to keep private. To Graham, it was not a professional network. It was a map. He traced profiles, connected details, constructed stories that sounded real enough to trust. Graham did not need to know how to break Twitter's systems. He only needed to know how to talk to the people protecting them. The plan formed slowly, quietly. No rush, no impulsiveness. Graham learned how to speak like IT staff, how to use familiar language, how to create urgency without sounding suspicious. Most importantly, he learned how to make people feel safe. This was not a loud attack. It was a psychological wager, where Graham bet everything on one assumption: that somewhere there would be a person tired enough, busy enough, trusting enough to comply. When the plan was ready, there was no turning back. Graham knew he was stepping into the most dangerous territory yet. But that feeling, standing on the edge, made everything painfully clear. This was the final move, and if it failed, he would lose everything. The call came at a moment that felt completely ordinary, not in the middle of the night, not during an emergency, just another normal workday. On the other end, Graham spoke calmly, steadily, without urgency. He introduced himself as internal IT, his voice confident enough to require no proof. He talked about VPN issues, about connection problems happening recently, about remote work overloading systems. Everything sounded familiar, reasonable. The employee had no reason to doubt it. Graham sent a link, just a login page that looked identical to the real one, except it existed for only one purpose. This moment, the employee typed his username, typed his password. On the other side of the screen, Graham typed the same credentials into Twitter's real system, two parallel worlds separated by seconds. Then came the final step, two-factor authentication. A message appeared on the employee's phone. He read the code aloud and entered it into the fake page without hesitation. In that instant, Graham received what he needed. The door opened. No alarms, no warnings, no automatic defenses, just a simple message. Login successful. Graham was inside. What made it terrifying was not sophistication, but simplicity. No brute force, no firewall breaches, no complex code. Just a convincing voice and a human being willing to trust. In a few short minutes, control changed hands without anyone noticing. And in that moment, Graham knew this was no longer an experiment. This was a point of no return. Once inside, Graham did not run. He did not rush. Everything appeared clean and clinical, like a control panel familiar to those who ran Twitter every day. This was not a game interface. It was the nervous system of a platform where hundreds of millions of people spoke, argued, believed, and now a 17-year-old stood in front of it. Graham had admin privileges, the highest level, not read-only access, not observation, but the power to change things. A few clicks, change an email address, reset a password. An account disappeared from its owner and belonged to someone else. No questions asked, no notifications, no permission required. Famous names, accounts, thought untouchable, reduced to editable data fields. Graham could do it to anyone. No distinction between wealth, power, or fame. All of Twitter was, literally, in his hands. Yet the moment brought no triumph, no celebration, no rush of victory, only a heavy silence. Graham stared at the screen and realized absolute power did not feel like he imagined. It was cold, empty, like standing in a vast room so large you could no longer hear yourself think, no one to share it with, no one to confirm it was real. Just a very young person facing a system too large to fully grasp, and a truth that was hard to accept. None of this happened because he was extraordinary. It happened because the system trusted people, and that trust had been bent with a few simple actions. That realization was chilling, not because power fell into the wrong hands, but because it fell so easily, and no one noticed until it was too late. With control secured, Graham did not stop at proving he could do it. He moved to the next question, the most dangerous one. How to turn this power into money, immediately, before the door closed. Crypto for health appeared quickly. Simple, bare bones, carrying a message sweet enough to match the moment. The world was in chaos due to a pandemic. People were anxious, markets unstable, and Graham promised what many wanted to believe. Send money, get more back. He began with crypto influencers, trusted voices, familiar names. Each tweet was posted not by an unknown account, but by profiles followed by hundreds of thousands who trusted them. Money began to flow, quietly at first, but enough to confirm the plan was working. Then he took the next step, beyond crypto. Graham stepped into Twitter's brightest spotlight. Names the entire world recognized. Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Barack Obama, Joe Biden. The tweets appeared almost simultaneously, carrying the same promise, the same wallet address. Within minutes, millions saw them. Some laughed and scrolled past. Others did not. They believed. They sent money. Individual transactions merged into a flood. Bitcoin flowed into Graham's wallet silently. As the balance grew, his heartbeat did too. Not from joy, but from fear. Each passing minute brought discovery closer. On Twitter, confusion spread. Users panicked. Messages circulated. Questions multiplied. What was happening? Who was behind this? Meanwhile, Graham watched the chaos expand, line by line on his screen. Ambition had peaked. So had fear. This was the moment everything slipped beyond control. No longer a quiet operation, but a wave pulling millions with it in just a few hours. Somewhere else, far from Graham's room, Twitter realized this was no isolated incident. Strange calls, suspicious logins, major accounts changing passwords. Together, they formed a clear picture. Someone was inside, and they were not rushing. Twitter did not hold a press conference, did not issue public warnings. They responded the way systems defend themselves, quietly, decisively. Access privileges were revoked. Verified accounts were frozen en masse. Those who once had control were locked out. Platform functions were
The
restricted,
firewall won't hold
the flow
much
of
longer.
information
We need to
slowed.
reroute the signal
Then
through the
came the
secondary
final
server,
decision.
or we lose everything.
Twitter cut the VPN. Internal connections were severed. Not just Graham. All employees were disconnected to isolate the threat. In that moment, Graham watched his power evaporate faster than it had appeared. Buttons stopped responding. Admin pages failed to load. The screen returned cold messages. Access denied. It ended not with a chase, but with sudden silence. Graham was pushed outside, standing in front of a door that had just closed. Minutes earlier, he could alter the fate of the world's largest accounts. Now, he could only watch time pass. This was the moment of disillusionment, when power returned to the system he had exploited. And in that silence, Graham understood. The game was over. And this time, he was no longer in control. Everything that followed moved slower, heavier, stripped of excitement. As the chaos settled, authorities began connecting the dots. The FBI stepped in. Crypto wallets were monitored. Links surfaced. There were no dramatic chases, no cinematic arrests, just another ordinary morning when a door opened and Graham faced the consequences of his actions. He was arrested while still a minor. That changed everything.
Look at this.
Graham was not
They're already
tried as
inside
an
the
adult
network.
criminal,
If we don't
but
act
as a
now,
young
the
person who
firewall
had
will
gone
be
too
completely
far.
compromised.
The hearing took place during a global lockdown. Distant, cold, missing familiar faces. The sentence was handed down. 3 years in a juvenile facility, not to punish an evil genius, but to stop a path sliding out of control. Graham cooperated with authorities. Time served was counted. The days that followed passed without large screens, without access, without control. Only time. When Graham was released, he was no longer a teenager. The world had moved on, and his story quietly closed. No triumph, no satisfaction. Just a young person carrying the weight of past decisions, stepping back into a world that looked nothing like before. This story does not end with a clear moral lesson. There is no final judgment of right or wrong. Graham was neither a genius nor a monster, just a human who understood a truth we often forget. In every system, no matter how advanced, the greatest vulnerability is always human beings, not machines, not technology, but trust. And the final question is not what Graham did. It is this. If one day your phone vibrates and the voice on the other end sounds calm, confident, and convincing, are you certain you would not do the same?